Hello, everybody. Carolyn Williams with Money Reverse here. Come right on in. It's Money Monday. If you're here for Money Monday, just put Money Monday in the comments. Come right on in. We have a topic that sounds like it's a dreary topic, one that we really don't want to talk about. And I promise you that's not the case. I the Holy Spirit has really been dealing with me on this topic. So I want to share it with you here. So come right on in. Say Money Monday when you arrive. I'm going to share this out in the meantime on my personal timeline. So yeah, so come right on in. If this is something that you think some people on your timeline would enjoy seeing, just share it out on your personal timeline. Or, like I always say, you can wait until I say something that may be interesting because I don't share everything on my timeline. I don't share everything, so I wait and see if it's detail, if it's interesting enough. So come right on in. Thank you, Hetty. I see Hetty says Money Monday. Go on in. So I'm going to share this out on my timeline. I'm going to try it again. I don't necessarily know how to share, so we're going to see how it works. We're going to see if we can do it. Oh, I see how to share. Yeah. I'm going to say right at first. Okay, good deal. Now, for today's topic, we are going to talk about set your house in order. Yeah, Hetty shared it on her timeline. Thank you, Hetty. I appreciate that. So, any of Hetty's friends that's watching, just say, I'm a friend of Hetty's. Type it in the comments. Say, I'm a friend of Hetty's. So, we are going to talk today about set your house in order. Now, if this is a topic that you have ever heard, I mean, if you've sat in on a conversation like this that's talking about preparing to die, preparing for our demise. Now, we're really talking, this is Money Monday, so we're talking the financial side altogether. So we're talking about finances here. So it's an opportunity. Let me know if you've had a topic like this before, if you've had a conversation like this with a financial coach or a financial advisor. And then I'm going to ask for your feedback in the comments because I want to hear more about your experiences. One of the reasons that I'm sharing this is because I'm getting more and more conversations about this topic, and people are asking me about this topic. So I know that it's something that is desired. So I want to hear more of your experiences too. So we're going to talk about set your house in order. Set your house in order. Let's talk openly about death and money. And yeah, let's just talk openly about death and money. I'm going to just say a prayer real quick because I really need Holy Spirit guidance on this. Holy Spirit, come up in this place, Lord. Lord, permeate the digital media. So whether people are live here or on the replay, Lord, the whole purpose here is for you to be glorified. Teach us, Lord, better than I can ever do. Lord, touch each heart that are seeking information on this topic and show us what we personally need to do. And Lord, I pray that your Holy Spirit just comforts and any fear that any of us have with the topic of moving on away from this earthly life. Lord, we cancel those fears in the name of Jesus. This I ask in your son, Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Come right on in, everybody. Let's talk. Now, I want to talk about set your house in order. Set your house in order. We have an appointed time to die. We all have an appointed time to die. It's not something that we should be, I'm trying to straighten so I can, let's see, how do I do this? I need to fix myself. Yeah. Let's move over some. There we go. There we go. Because I want to be able to have that screen up and then also be able to see me. Okay, I can move the computer. I can move the computer. What a concept. Instead of moving my chair. Okay, let's do this. How does that work? Yeah, I want to talk to you about how many. I know all of us have auto insurance. Auto insurance is one of those things that is regulated, meaning required. If you're driving a vehicle, you are required to have auto insurance. If you have auto insurance, put auto insurance in the comments. Many of us also have homeowners insurance or even renters insurance. That way, if there is any type of accident or damage that's done to your home, or someone breaks in, or something's damaged from a storm or anything like that, you can get some restitution on that. So if you have home insurance or renter's insurance, just say home or renter's insurance. And then what about life insurance? Do you have a policy that either your company or you're carrying on yourself that helps, that is there for you just in case, in that case that you pass on, so that the monies that are not available for your life now, they would not be available if you were gone. If you were not here anymore, the salary that you have, the monies that you have available would not be available, because, you know, according to financial and legal ramifications, once we die, everything we have needs to be disposed of. Everything we have needs to be disposed of. Nothing is ever held in an individual's name that has passed on. So we have to talk about disposing of things. So if you have, I see some of you says, yeah, I have home insurance, I have auto insurance, and you know, some of you have life insurance. I just want us to think about this. How much money do we spend on insurance for things that might happen? Maybe you'll have an auto accident, maybe you won't. I've had auto insurance for a lot of years, and I can tell you, I haven't had an auto accident since I was 20 years old, and that's a lot of years. I think I talked about it in another session where a lady ran through the light and hit me. I was about 20. I was just out of college and working my first job here in Dallas, Fort Worth. I'm in Texas right now. So we spend a lot of money on insurance that we're putting energy, money, time, commitment to something that might happen. That might happen. Death is going to happen. We all have an appointed time to die, and that's not morbid. We're going to talk about this a little bit more. But I just want you to think about, let's just take this next 45 minutes to an hour, and let's devote this to discussing and preparing for something that we know is going to happen, right? I'm paying for auto insurance and haven't had an accident. Have I put that amount of money in preparing for something that I know is going to happen? I'm going to die. I'm not going to live forever. And for those that know the truth, that's a good thing. That is a great thing. So let's just kind of put things in perspective. And so thank you. I see David from Kansas City. He just said, yeah, he has auto, home, and life insurance. Yeah. Let's talk about, just add up how much money you put in insurance for something that might happen. We hope it doesn't. We hope an accident doesn't happen. I hope my home isn't damaged. I hope I don't have storm damage. But am I putting at least some money aside, even if it's not equal amount, into something that we know is going to happen? And what is going to happen is we're going to die. It's appointed. We all have an appointed time to die. So let's review a little bit. In our last Money Monday session, we talked about destination wealth, the number one step that we must take to get to destination wealth. And in that destination wealth, that step was spend management. Now, the key part of spend management is manage. Now, what we have here is just a review. Manage is to handle with a high degree of skill, to have executive ownership, to treat with care, to have executive and supervisory duties over, and to direct and carry on business or affairs. Now, last Money Monday, we established that as we move into wealth, we have to move into understanding management and taking responsibility for managing the finances that is entrusted to us. Everything belongs to God, and He is entrusting a certain number of things to us based on how much He can trust us to manage it. The more that you expand in your capacity to manage, the more that you're going to get to manage. So, with that, I want us to understand that as we prepare for the day that we are no longer on this earth, we prepare for the day that we die, it's a part of management. It's a part of management. This is not something that we need to avoid. If you can come to me and talk to me about investing in the stock market and teaching you stock market investing and helping you to get your debts paid down, then this conversation always comes up. I always ask a few questions around this topic because this is a key part of management, preparing for the day that we're no longer here, preparing for the day that we go home to be with the Lord. So with that, management. Now, I want you to take a look here. This is Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verses 1 through 8. And I love this passage of scripture. I know it by heart. And I just want you to know it too. I am really big on seasons. The Lord has really taught me over the years to really understand seasons, to not get all caught up in anything. That's why you never hear me complaining about the weather. You know, it's too hot, it's too cold. I know it's just a season. And in that season, this is what it looks like. So with that, there is, if you look down on verse 2 here, it says, to everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck what is planted. Now, every one of these, it talks about a particular point in life. And then it says, and a time to something else. And it is more than likely the polar opposite of what that first thing is. So just like we celebrate, we prepare for everything, including the birth of a child going to school for the first time. We prepare for all of those things. We also need to prepare for this season in which we are no longer going to be here, that season in which our earthly life is over. Now let's take a look at the word here. Here is 2 Kings chapter 20, verse 1. In those days, Hezekiah was sick and near death. And Isaiah the prophet, the son of Amos, went to him and said to him, thus says the Lord, set your house in order, for you shall die and not live. Oh, wow. Yeah, talk about I don't want a prophet walking up to me saying this. But, you know, Hezekiah was king at that time. Hezekiah became king when he was 25 years old, and he reigned for 29 years. So Hezekiah was king. So I do want you to know that the Lord sent word by the prophet to Hezekiah to say, set your house in order. This was not about understanding the Lord, getting your relationship with the Lord. Hezekiah was walking with the Lord. He did things according to, if you look back in chapter 18 of 2 Kings, that's when Hezekiah was first crowned king. And it talks about his reign. And he honored the Lord. He walked with the Lord, and he did what the Lord had called him to do during his time of reign. So please know that this passage is not about Hezekiah, I need you to get your relationship with me right. That's not what this was talking about. The prophet wanted Hezekiah to set his house in order, make sure that his arrangements were prepared, that all of the conversations that needed to have disposal of his events, of his assets, making sure that those things were taken care of, because he said, you're going to die. And so if you read on in chapter 20 of Second Kings, Hezekiah, he cried out to the Lord. He said, Lord, but I got my face before you. I've honored you, Lord. And Hezekiah was sick. He was really sick at this time. So he said, Lord, I'm just asking for more time. And the Lord did grant him more time. The Lord said, I'm giving you another 15 years. And that's exactly what the Lord gave him. So Hezekiah prayed and he had more time, but that didn't excuse him for set his house in order. I don't know if he set his house in order at that time. I tell my family, one of my sisters, who we talk all the time. And I tell her that you don't want to know what goes on in the mind of a nerd, because your mind just goes all over the place and you don't want to know all of that. But I'm going to tell you, as I read the scripture, here's my nerd mind going, did he set his house in order right then? Or did he wait till it was close to the 15 years? Did he hear the word of the Lord? I know he asked for more time, but does that mean he negated the word? What the prophet said was no good. He didn't need to set his house in order. Did he disobey God? This is how my mind works. None of those answers are there. So I don't know what he did at the time, but I do know that he asked the Lord for 15 more years. And the Lord did grant him 15 more years. So with that, just know this was about getting yourself ready, because your time is coming. We all have an appointed time to die. It wasn't just Hezekiah. We all have an appointed time to die. Take a look at this scripture. This is Psalms chapter 90, verse 12. So teach us to number our days, that we may gain a heart of wisdom. That is, again, Psalm chapter 90, verse 12. We all have appointed time to die. When we can think about this, when we look at this, when we understand that our days are numbered, it makes us act differently. It should make us act differently. There's this, fear of missing out, and I'm going to live for today. I had one person tell me my last check is going to bounce, meaning I'm spending everything. That last check I write is going to bounce, because guess what? I ain't leaving nothing behind. So yeah, we think about it that way too, but we also want to think about this so that we can play a part, that management role that the Lord has called us to in the area of finance. When we start to talk about finance, again, the more that you expand your capacity to manage, the more you're going to be able to manage. So Lord, teach us to number our days so that we can gain more wisdom in this, so that we can appreciate each day as it is, so that we can understand that you've called us to manage and you've given us specific people, specific things in our lives, and we're going to appreciate those and manage those. And Lord, we're going to prepare for that time when you say it's time for this earthly life to be over. We have a responsibility there. Okay. Now, I also want to take a look at a few things, a few more scriptures. John chapter 9, verse 4. I must work the works of him who sent me while it's day. The night is coming when no one can work. All through the word, we see instances that this life is not going to last forever. If we love the Lord and are called according to his purpose and focusing on following his word, I want us to know this. We know that we're not going to live forever. And there are things that we must do. Again, when we number our days so that we can get more wisdom, do what the Lord has called us to do right now. Take every day. That's why I'm doing Money Mondays, because this is what the Lord has called me to do. So I'm embracing this wholeheartedly. Therefore, you should also be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect. Again, that's Matthew chapter 24, verse 44. Now, if the Lord is coming specifically for me, or if he's coming to take the earth, if he's coming back to take all of his people back to heaven, either way, we need to be prepared. That day is coming, and we don't know when it is, so we can't map it out. And then for me, to live is Christ and to die is gain. I love this. Philippians chapter 1, verse 21. I just love this because we know, when we know the truth, that leaving this earth is not a bad thing. I'm going to tell you, if you know my testimony, you know that I've gone through a health crisis that taught me that, yeah, that taught me. I'm going to tell you, until you get okay about dying, you're not truly living. When you learn that it's okay if I die, Lord, I trust that you're going to take me at my appointed time, and I'm okay with that. I'm not afraid of that. I just want to live each day. Thank you for this day. And Lord, if you take me tomorrow, your will be done. And that's where I got in the health crisis that I went through. There was a tumor in the center of my brain for 4 years. And that is a position that I took. And I still have that position now. And until then, until you get there, you're truly not living, because you start to really peel back the onion and see what's important and what's not important. So I'm going to say, to live is Christ and to die is gain. Meaning, I'm going to live here and I'm going to do all I can for the Lord. But when it's time to die, I know where I'm going. And I say, thank you, Lord, for the time that you've given me. And that brings me joy. So again, until you get okay with dying, you're not truly living. So I want you all to be truly into living and enjoying each day that the Lord has given us. Now, I'm going to start to use a different word, and this word is demise. Demise. It's there. It is there. I actually pulled this from Merriam-Webster, and you can see the number one definition for demise is death, cessation of existence or activity, and the loss of a position or status. So I'm going to now start to use plan for your demise. Now, one thing I want to talk about, let's think about some life processes. Life is a process. Life is full of processes. Let's think about it. When you get pregnant, when women get pregnant, when my mom was pregnant with me, that was a process. There was a process to get pregnant. There was a process throughout the pregnancy. Giving birth was a process. Raising children when they're toddlers, when they go through teething, everything is a process. When you have children, when you're birthing them, when you're teething them, when they start school, when they get baptized, when you're going to school, you're going to college, you get out of college, you get a job, you start a job, you get married, you meet somebody, you date, you get married. Life is full of processes, many processes. Very few of these processes involve nobody but you. Very few are processes that you go through alone. Most of them involve other people. And a lot of the earlier processes in life, you were a part of the process, but you had no say so. I had no say so whether the egg that, fertilized me, I didn't have a say so. Say, yeah, today is the day. I have nothing to do with that. I have nothing to do with being born. So I do want you to know that life is full of processes. Dying is preparing for your demise. That's a process too. And just like many other processes, it's not something that you do alone. It's going to involve other people. But there's no fear there, because just about every life process that we've gone through and have gone through successfully, some of them have been good, some of them not so good. Divorce is a process. I haven't been divorced, but I know people that have, and that is a process. That's a very painful process. But you got through it. You got through it. Once you realized that you needed to go through this process, you did whatever you had to do to muster up, learn about it, learn what to do. You got wisdom on how to handle things in that process. And for those of you that haven't gone through the divorce, God bless you. Like I said, I have not, but I know people that have. And it's something that has, really plagued a lot of people, or the death of a spouse. When the two become one, that's two joining. So any type of tearing apart, whether it's through divorce or through death or through separation, or whether it's temporary or permanent, that's a difficult process. So I just want you to know that dying is a process. preparing for your demise is a process too. So we're going to talk about that now. If anything I'm saying is making sense, just say making sense. Now, when we're trying to set our house in order, I want us to consider the demise of yourself. Now, one thing that I know most of us are thinking is, yeah, we need to prepare for our death. We need to prepare for our death. We need to prepare for our demise. And why do we need to prepare for our demise? Because this is a part of management. We just don't want to put our family through a burden, a financial burden, a burden of making decisions about what we wanted to do, your last wishes. Your family is, we just don't want to be that burden. If you don't want to be a burden, I know you don't. I know you don't. Nobody does. Nobody wants to be a burden. So when you don't prepare for your demise, you're going to leave a burden for someone to make decisions for you and possibly to pay for those decisions. So with that, we got to prepare for the demise of ourselves. But one thing I want us to know, there's a few other people that we need to think about. Minor children. If you are a parent and you have minor children can sit and watch me here on the social media and they can think about it, but there's not too many things that they can do to prepare for their demise. So we have to, if we have minor children, we have to prepare for their demise. We are not, we're praying that this doesn't happen, but if it does happen, we need to at least have some questions answered about what our next steps are. So we need to prepare for our minor children. And then the third group of people that we need to prepare for our demise, to think about this, is those that closely affect you. This is your spouse. So you can't prepare for your spouse's demise, but your spouse can and includes you in. Again, that spouse, that's a very close bonded relationship. So that spouse is such a close relationship that, this is something you need to do together, but you need to prepare for each one separately. I mean, you have to prepare for each one separately and include each other in the conversations and the decision making. The other group of people that you have to think about, those that you provide care for. If you provide care for, if you have a special needs family member, a special needs child, a special needs family member, if you care for your parents, if you care for someone, that if you're a caregiver for anybody, whether it's a neighbor or another family member, you have to prepare for the demise of these individuals too. Especially if you're providing care for them, you're probably the closest to them. And so decisions need to be made, conversations need to be had. And if you're providing that care, that primary care, then you're probably the first point of contact to think about this, whether it's your parent, your minor children, anybody that you care for. Again, special needs individuals are very important because special needs individuals need additional accommodations. And if you're serving that need, and if you're no longer here, we need to make provisions for that. And so another group that I want us to think about is partners. If you are in a business partnership, if you own property with somebody, we need to also think about the demise of these individuals. Let's work through what these partnerships look like in this case. So if you own property with somebody, I own property with somebody, a good friend of mine, and I bought property together, over 20 years ago. Actually, it's property in Las Vegas. It's property in Las Vegas. And we've talked about this. Of course, I brought this up years ago. And this friend and I are, we bought property on Las Vegas Strip. And we both use the property. We give it out and let people go and stay there, different things like that. I think both of us have, said somebody else go stay in my property on the Vegas Strip. I haven't been to Vegas in years, but people have stayed in my property and said, oh my God, it's lovely. And I know my friend that I bought this property with has also given it away to people, and they've gone to stay there. But this individual and I spoke about this, and we shared, and I said, if I go before you, then you take my property. It's yours. And if you go before me, I take the property. In other words, I don't want to partner with other members of your family that I didn't agree to have a partnership with. So I know you maybe, want to leave this to family members, but remember, you got a partner here. Don't, think of you as partners. You need to think about what's going to happen if one person goes before you and you have a house together, you have a business together. Let's talk about what's going to happen in that case. So with that, these are individuals that we also need to think about the demise of these individuals, partners, whether you have a business, property owners, those you care for, special needs. So it's not just you. So this is where the management comes in. Okay. Now, when we talk about this, when we start to prepare for demise of ourselves, other people, the considerations that we have are going to vary greatly based on your marital status, whether you're single or married. And we're going to talk about this a little bit more. But when you're single, I'm going to say single people, I really need single people to jump in and start to think about and talk about what's going to happen in your demise. With the married couple, the spouse is right there to catch anything that hasn't been prepared for. So even if there's not a will or there's no written instructions, there's a spouse there. And so with that, the state, we'll talk about this in a minute when we talk about a will, or what happens if you die without a will. But when you're single, there's nobody there that's entitled to it. If you don't say what's going to happen, it's going to be left up to the state to determine what happens with that property. And every state has different intestate laws. It's each state, there's no state that's the same. And some of these laws are very strange, everybody. I want you to know some of these laws are very strange. In most cases, the state is going to do what we should have done while we were alive, is look first to the spouse, then to the children, then to the extended family. And 90% of the cases, it's going to be that way. But you also have blended families as well. Children, are you talking about, children from birth? What if you got blended families? It gets complicated the way our families are made up today. So again, single people. If you're single, I want you to take away from this that I really need to sit down and start to think and talk about what's going to happen in the disposal of those things that the Lord has given me. Remember, when we pass on, my name is no longer a valid living person. So nothing can stay in my name. It has to go somewhere. It has to go. It cannot stay in Carolyn Williams' name when Carolyn Williams is no longer here. That's what it's called. In the estate world, it's called disposal of assets. Because really, we have to dispose of it. Carolyn Williams is no longer here. She can't own anything. Okay. Now, what happens if we do nothing? Okay. What happens if we're supposed to be setting our house in order? We know that we should, but we don't do anything. Here's a few things that will happen. And I talked about this earlier. Number one, the burden is put on those you love. I hear some people say, oh, I'm not going to care. I'm going to be dead. Oh, I don't care what y'all do. Y'all can bury me, burn me up. I don't care. I'm going to be dead. I don't care where I go. It does matter because it's going to be, the burden is put on those that you love. And it is going to be a burden. This is going to be a time that's a very difficult time for them. Now they've got to go and start making decisions. They've got to start coming up with money to do things. If you didn't talk about this, where are they going to get this from? Who is going to make these decisions? Single people, who's going to make these decisions? Married people, you got a spouse. So again, that married couple has a little bit more insulation because you got a spouse. But single people, who's going to make these decisions? we got to figure it out. Okay. Number one, your last wishes are being guessed. They just don't know. They're guessing on what you wanted to do. It is very possible that family disagreements and squabbles and arguments and fights, and have you known of fights to come up at a funeral or a repast? I have. I've known that at a family funeral where disagreements and arguments come up. Look, guys, costly decisions need to be made, and they need to be made quickly. There's decisions that need to be made on next steps. If you've done nothing to prepare for this, somebody, we don't know who yet, they've got to make decisions, and they've got to make these decisions quickly. And then they've got to find money to pay for these decisions. And the learning curve is very short on what to do. Very short time. You got to figure out this process, and you got to figure it out quick. And then final memories of you may not be positive. If this caused a whole lot, I can tell you, I did have, whenever you see a lot of disagreements and things like that happen behind a death, it just really does kind of mar the memory of that individual. That's not what they wanted at all. They did not want you to be arguing. They did not want this. They just did not want this. So we do this for our family. You're not doing this for you. I've heard people say, oh, I don't care. I'm going to be gone. Y'all can do whatever y'all want with it. I'm going to be gone. I don't care. But you're not doing it for you. This isn't about you at this point. You want to do this for your family so that you don't put them through this. Look at this lady that has tears in her eyes. And why are the tears in her eyes? We don't know if it's because of, the situation that her loved one is no longer here, or it's just turmoil of decisions that can't be made, people that don't want to accept it, won't move forward. How many times have you known a funeral to be put off for weeks because the family couldn't get together on it? This is what happens. So we do this for the family, not for ourselves. Okay. Now, we talked a lot about why and that we should get our house in order. But now let's talk about how do we get there? How do we get there? There's a few things that I want us to understand first. Everything that I'm talking about here is a part of estate planning. And when you have major estate plans that need to be put in place, you may need an estate attorney. Many of the documents is going to be required to manage a large estate are going to require documents that need to have an estate attorney associated with them. So just know estate planning. And number two, our U.S. laws preside if you die without a will. How many times I can mention several musical entertainment artists that died without a will, and because the news always puts it up. The news always says this person died without a will. I'm going to mention a couple here. Aretha Franklin, if no mistake, Prince, died without a will. What happens there is the state laws decide what to do with their disposal, with their assets. Again, nothing can stay in their name. And if they had a large estate, that's a lot of decisions that need to be made. I'm sure they would have wanted to make some of those decisions themselves instead of have the state do it for them. Now, anytime that you pass away, in the case of your demise, estate taxes will be due for estates valued over 12.6 million. If your estate, everything you own, is less than 12.6 million, you're okay. You're okay. But anytime that estate is over 12.6 million, there's estate taxes that have to be paid. And estate taxes are not low taxes. So just know if you're under 12.6 million for a single 25.2 million for a married couple. Now, also, no matter how much your estate is, your final debts are going to be due from your final assets. So if you owe individuals, once they are notified that you have passed on These individuals are going to reach out to the banks. Your bank account is going to be closed. These individuals are going to reach out to banks, and any debts that you have are going to be due from anything that you leave before anything is passed on to any of the individuals that you had designated. So again, management becomes important. So this is just a few things I want us to understand in setting your house in order. Now that we got these under our belts, if there's any questions, you can type your questions in the comments. I'm going to ask some things of you. As a matter of fact, I'm going to ask you a question right now. If you have gone through handling the final arrangements for someone that did not make any plans ahead of time. No, let's say if they did make plans. If you know of somebody, let's just say no. If you know of somebody that at the time of their demise, they had made plans for everything that they wanted to have happen. And, even if it wasn't fully baked through, meaning some people I know, they had the funeral program written, they had everything paid for, the plot where they wanted to be buried, the funeral home, everything was mapped out. All the person had to do was go in and just execute the plan. They didn't have to come off any money or anything and had all the money there. If you've known somebody that did that, just say, I know a planner. Just say, I've known somebody that's planned. Because I can tell you, I talked to the individual that in one case that I'm thinking of, and I know several people that's done this. I know several people that had it all planned out. And so I talked to one of the individuals that I'm thinking of that was the person that came in and made that plan happen for an individual that passed on. I talked to that individual actually last week, and that individual said, Carolyn, it was so simple. The last thing I wanted to do was to be planning and trying to decide, where they wanted to be buried. And, I wouldn't have had the money to do this. And I am not going to do a GoFundMe for this. Because it has to be paid for. So this individual just went on and on talking to me about how it just took that burden off them so that they could go through the grieving process, because it was a pretty big grieving process. And so they said, I was able to grieve at the time that everybody else was grieving. I was able to be strong. I just didn't have those frustrations of dealing with that. So yeah, I see someone says, I know someone that's planned. Yeah, that's good. And if you were the individual that made that plan come to pass, I was like, oh my God, it just took such a burden off of you. Now, if you know someone and you have been involved in planning the arrangements for someone that did not have a plan, then can you just say, I was involved? Just say I was involved. Whether you planned the services, you had to help make arrangements, you had to give money, you had to do a lot of things like that. And there just wasn't a plan there. Just say, I've been involved. Because what I want us to do, and I'm curious to see, and whether you're watching this on the replay also, I want to hear from you too. Yeah. And I see one individual said they know somebody that planned and I was involved. Yeah, that's good. It's good to see both sides of it. It's good to see. I wish we wouldn't have to see both sides, but it's good to see that so that we can start to think about what do we want our experience to be. Because remember, we all have an appointed time to die. We're all going to die. We're all going to die. We're not exempt. Yeah. I was involved. Yeah. So if you were involved in someone that didn't have a plan, that taught us some things. That taught us. We learned the process of what steps to take pretty quickly. We learned what has to happen about getting death certificates. Social Security pays $255. It's not barely enough to get a death certificate, right? So it's just really not enough to do anything with. So everything that happens outside of, I see someone else says I've been through both scenarios. So let's talk, let's really kind of look at what do we want our experience to be like? Because remember, we're doing this for the family. We're not doing this for us. This is not for us. We're doing this for the family. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about how do we get there? How do we get there? I want to mention a few things here. Now, please know that as a disclaimer, this information is for educational purposes only. None of you here have a signed agreement with me. We are not under any type of agreement or contract to work through any legacy planning or estate planning services. So this is for educational purposes only. If you need to take some action to do this, then please consult with individuals that you do research to find and get your best information and make decisions based on information that you find. Don't take anything from this conversation as an action item that you need to do lock, stock, and barrel all wrapped up without doing any research and making decisions on your own. Okay? So with that, let's talk about a will. Let's talk about a will. A will, this is the way that we declare our intentions on disposing of at property at death. The one way, this is not, if you don't have a will at the time that you die, state laws govern how you dispose of assets, the state laws, and each state law is different. So now if you die without a will, that's called intestate, and state intestacy laws come into play. Now, a will is the only way that you can name an individual that will take the responsibility to close out your assets. This is the only way. Without having a will, you can have a conversation, and as long as your family's cordial and nobody's, causing a ruckus, yeah, we can have a verbal agreement. But if anybody tries to challenge that, you're going to come up with stress. But a will is a way that you say, this individual is the one that I want to execute the plan to dispose of my assets and my business. So a will is a way that you do that. Now, you can have a holographic will. A holographic will is one that is completely handwritten, meaning you have at the time, you went through a scenario and you realize, you're getting close to death and you have not made a major plan. You can make a holographic will. It's completely handwritten and it's accepted over by 26 states. I looked this up. Every year, each state is different. Please know our 50 states are the United States, but each one is like its own little country. It's got its own laws. We know that. We see things. I live in Texas, so yeah, we see things that are different in some states than any other state. Just know each state has their own laws. And so I kind of looked up 26 states accept a holographic will, which is completely handwritten will. And some states, check your state and see if this is even possible. Because some states said it needs to be completely handwritten, and some states say all of the pertinent pieces need to be handwritten. Therefore, you can get a form that has, blanks in it, and you can handwrite the blanks. But some states say, we won't even accept the form unless everything is in your pen. We're not going to accept it. So definitely look and see what your state says about this. So because I don't want you to think that creating a will is this great, big, huge thing that you need to hire an attorney to do. You don't. You don't need to hire an attorney to have a will that is going to be validated in the state that you're in. Just look and see at the state laws. You don't have to pay anybody to do a will. You can do it all digital with some of the digital legal firms. You can do it any kind of way. Don't think that creating a will is this big, huge thing that you have to pay somebody a lot of money to do. That's the reason I brought up a holographic will. And then there's also some verbal wills, and most states don't accept verbal wills anymore. Verbal wills, what would they call it? Starts with an N. I forget the name right now. But these were wills that if you wanted to create your will on your deathbed with witnesses there in the room, you could do that. It's a verbal will. Most states don't accept those anymore. I was thinking that they would accept them more because you could do video, but the states have just really gotten away from that. I was kind of shocked. I thought that they would accept it more because you got video, but no, no. I was shocked at that. Okay, so let's go back to it. Now, the distribution of your assets can be per stirpes or per capita. Now, per stirpes or per capita. So let's talk about per stirpes, per stirpes. Now, I'm going a little bit deep here because I just want to explain some things because I want you to think about this. Per stirpes means, suppose I should have put a diagram in here. I didn't think about that. Suppose that we have Alma, A. Alma passes away, and Alma has 3 children: Bobby, Cindy, and Don. A, B, C, D. Okay? So Alma passes away. Now she has 3 children, B, C, and D. Cindy has passed away. So you got B, but Cindy has left children. Okay, so Cindy's not there, but Cindy has children. When you go per stirpes, then per stirpes says Alma is going to divide her assets in 3s. She has 3 children. So she's going to give a third to Bobby, a third to Cindy, and a third to Don. That's per stirpes. Now, Cindy's not there, but Cindy has 2 children, so they each take that third and they divide that too. They divide that third between the living children there. Make sense? So that is per stirpes. When you say per capita, it's looking at the individuals. It looks at Alma, Bobby, Cindy, and Don, and then all of their children and all of their grandchildren. So then you look at everybody there, and her assets are divided by every child with a percentage based on the number of heads that's there. So that's just something to think about when you're starting to divide up assets, that you can do it either of those ways. And like the term that I say, there's one individual here that's in the lesson that's here that I have spoken to about this. And one thing that I always say, I was going to ask this individual, what did I say? But if I ask that individual that, then you'll know who it is, and they don't have any anonymity. So we don't want to do that. But one thing that I say is that fair is not equal. Fair is not equal. You don't have to divide things up equally. You want to divide things up in a way that makes sense for you not being here. Suppose I have 3 children, and one of my children is a special needs child, and one of my children is very irresponsible, and one of my children is very responsible. What sense would it make for me to divide things up equally when I know that special needs child is going to need more than the individuals that are working? The individual that's working and has a very good job, that's very responsible, why would I give them the same amount that I'm giving my special needs child? I would give my special needs child more because I need those monies to be around. I'm no longer going to be here. So fair is not equal. Don't think that you have to divide it up equally. Divide it up in the way that you decide it should be based on, and you're going to use wisdom. Lord, give us, teach us to number our days so that we can gain wisdom. We can gain a heart of wisdom. Don't think it has to be equal. Fair is not equal. Fair is not equal. If you have someone that is not responsible with money, why would you leave money to them when they're not ready to deal with it? If you have someone that you know has a substance abuse problem, why would you leave them a lot of money? You see what I mean? We've got to think it through. You've got to think it through. And that's something that only you can do. That's why we have to prepare and plan so that you can make these decisions and think things through in a way that makes sense for you. Okay, now a will must go through probate, and probate is a court system in which it just validates that the will is valid and that it can be executed. So with that, it must go through probate. So this is a will. This is a will. So this is something I want you to know about. Please know a will is not a big deal that you need to have $5,000 to be able to create a will. Nope. That's the reason I brought up a handwritten will. Because if it's handwritten, trust me, you didn't pay an attorney to do it. Okay? So look up what your state allows and just make sure that you have something in place if you find that this is something that's needed for your estab. I think that everybody needs to have their wishes documented in a will or something, or trust. We're not going to talk about trust or anything like that. We're only going to go with basic things here. Okay. Now, second thing I want us to talk about is a beneficiary. A designated beneficiary, this is an individual that inherits an asset such as the balance of an individual retirement account or life insurance policy after the death of the asset owner. Now, the interesting thing about a designated beneficiary is that the designated beneficiary bypasses everything. A designated beneficiary bypasses a will. A designated beneficiary bypasses a trust. So if you have something that you want to go directly to an individual and it is an asset that is allowed to be designated with the beneficiary, make sure your beneficiaries are in place. So with that, there are select assets that can go this way. Life insurance, retirement plans, investment accounts, and even bank accounts, checking and savings account. They're not called beneficiaries. They're called POD. I call them POD, and I think it is still called POD, and it's payable upon death. This is where, if you know about POD, if you have your bank account set up with POD, can you just put in the comments POD? If you've never heard of it, if you've never heard of POD, just say haven't heard. Let me tell you about POD, especially my single people. A POD is where you go to the bank and you tell the bank, if I die, I want this account to be payable to this individual. Now, that individual doesn't have access to your account unless you're alive. That individual will need to bring to the bank upon your demise a copy of the death certificate and also have their ID to show that they are to receive the funds in this account. This is something that's very important because this is how we can see about getting your final services paid. If your demise is not from a sickness, from something that just happened suddenly, then how you didn't have time to plan for it. There was no weeks, there was no months to prepare for this. So with that, I think that those of you that have not heard of a POD, I'm glad that I can share something with you because you can do this. Let me tell you, all you need to do this is to talk to the individual that you want to put as a POD. You will need their social security number. And the reason I say that is because I want you to be very particular about giving your social security number too, So it needs to be somebody that you trust. If they say they want to put you as a POD, it needs to be somebody that you trust. They can get the social security number. And when I changed my POD, I think it was like 8-9 years ago. Maybe about 10 years ago, I changed my POD and I talked to this individual before we did it. And this individual was very hesitant. I changed my POD because I thought this was a better solution for dealing with my assets in the time of my demise. The individual is much younger than me. The individual is very responsible with money, and the individual was a little bit intimidated. And they said, I don't want to do this. I don't know. I know you got some plans and you got lots of money, and I don't want to do it. And I go, baby, it's going to be okay. I said, I'm going to map out the plans, have it all. We're going to sit and go through it. And they go, well, I don't know. I said, it's going to be okay. Then give me your social, okay? Give me your social so I can call the bank. So I called the bank and I made updates on all of my accounts. So this individual was assigned to be my POD. And that's on my checking, savings, uh, retirement accounts. That is on my investment accounts, all bank accounts. You can do this. And so that individual doesn't have access to my account. If they went to the bank today, they go, get out of here. You can't get to this person's account. Now, if they show up with my death certificate in their hand and their ID and be ready to validate their social, they have access to my accounts at that point. So with that, I want you to take away. I see some individuals know about POD. Yes, good. That's very good. For those that didn't, I hope this is something that you take away because it's something that you can do right away. When I did this, I did not have to go to the bank. I did it digitally, and the individual that I added did not have to go with me because I had this individual's social. They did not have to go with me. So it was something that was very easy to do. It was harder to do years ago. So with that, just know that this will bypass a will. This will allow you to bypass a trust, and bypass estate planning. It goes directly to that person. Now, when you open an investment account, I work with a lot of traders. When you open an investment account, if you don't put in a beneficiary on that account right away, they bug you to death, don't they? They're like, you need a beneficiary on here. You need a beneficiary. They bug the crap out of you to put it on there because they know they need that. They don't want to have to deal with 15 people running up and say, I'm her child. No. You gave it to who? No, I'm her husband. No. They say, put a beneficiary on here. You say what needs to happen with this money in the case that you're not here. Because the bank said, we don't want to deal with that. So they're kind of funny. They kind of bug you to get that beneficiary on there. So just know beneficiary. What I want you to do is just like I did years ago, when you set your beneficiaries up, go through a time when you evaluate and reevaluate if you want to keep those same beneficiaries. I do know somebody that got an inheritance. I told you a lot of my clients call because they have come into money. I know somebody that the individual, their ex-husband, did not update the beneficiaries. And this individual received a lot of money from their ex-husband when they passed on. Now, I don't know if the ex-husband married somebody else. I don't know. But this individual received money. Say, I got a call and, my ex-husband passed away. I hadn't talked to him in years, but I was the beneficiary on his retirement plan. So I got the money. Coming. So can I hire you? I said, sure, you can hire me. We can work with this. So do keep your beneficiaries updated. It's very important. The bank is not going to ask you a question. The bank is going to do whatever that beneficiary says. And if you need to update them. I updated mine. I think it was about 10 years ago. The designated beneficiary that I had, I decided that I really wanted to change and really go with somebody that was younger. And I'm glad that I did. So with that, designated beneficiary. Now, we've talked about everything. That's just a couple of things that we are going to go through about how you can dispose of assets. But let's talk about immediately what happens when you pass away. Let's talk about those final services. Once you're declared no longer on this side, then we need to talk about what happens immediately. Okay, this doesn't matter how much money you have, if you have an estate, if you got 12 million, still something needs to be done to prepare for your final services. Now, I do want you to know that there are many options. Here's some things that I want you to think about. Do you want to have a service? What city will your service be held? Do you want to have a church service? Do you want to have graveside service? Do you want to have a memorial service? Do you want to have it digital? and or in person? Do you want to be buried? Do you want to be cremated? Do you want to have a memorial program? What content and what pictures are going to be in there? Um, you can pre-plan and you can update annually to make changes. So you can do even writing the funeral program and update it annually. If you have pictures, in my family, yeah, I'm pretty weird, and people in my family have heard me say, "Oh, I like that picture. I want that one on my funeral program. We're gonna put this one on my funeral program." And everybody just laugh because have you had a not saying there's anything wrong with this, but I've known people that passed away at 95 and they have a high school graduation picture up there for them. You don't even know who it is. So I'm going, why would they put such a young picture there? And maybe it meant something, or, I don't know why, but, whatever it is, make the decisions that you want to make. For me, I think I want the picture to look similar to the way I looked around the time of death within the last year or two. Don't go back to my elementary pictures when I had cat glasses on. Well, we've come full circle because I got cat glasses again. So here we go. It's coming full circle. So we can't go back to that elementary picture where I had cat glasses. They were green. I'm going to get some new ones. So these are some things that I want you to think about. You can pre-plan and update annually. I do planning. The reason I'm talking about this in August is because I take my birthday to kind of look at some of the plans that I have to see what things I'm missing, because my plans are not fully baked out. They're planned out, but they're not fully baked out, meaning I know what I'd like to do, but I haven't done it all yet to prepare for my demise. Make sure that you have the funds to cover the cost. If you're a veteran, there are certain memorial benefits that you get. So if the individual is a veteran, let's make sure that we know that, so that we can, contact the Veterans Association and make sure that they get the honors that they deserve. If you want to be an organ donor, we opt in. I just re-updated my driver's license, and I am an organ donor. I do plan to be cremated. I want to give if anything I have physically benefits somebody, take it, and everything else, just burn it up. Just burn it up. So with that, if you want to be an organ donor, opt in for that. But the main thing is to discuss this with family. I've had discussions of what my desires are with family. Most of my family members, my sisters, we've had these conversations about what we'd like. Some we've had deeper conversations than others. My family is starting to have conversations with their children about this. So, because you have to discuss this with family, your family is probably going to have something to say about some of your decisions. And so we have to give them time to be okay with it. We have to give them time to be okay with it. When I shared with my family that I was going to be cremated, and, and I grew up in the South and grew up in a Baptist church in the South, and that's just not something that we did. That's just not something that we did. It took a while for some of my family members to be okay with that. And when I say a while, not a few hours, like a couple of years, to say, yeah, I said, did you know that I want it? Yeah, we're okay with that. But it took some years of them getting to be okay with that. And with that, you don't want to argue about it. You just want to share and just give them the time that they need to be okay with that. If some of your wishes are some non-traditional to what hasn't been done in your family before, one of my aunts I talked to, and she said, "I'm not having a service." And I said, "Yes, you are." She said, "I'm not having a service." I said, "Yes, you are." She goes, "Why would I have a service?" I go, and so we talked about this, and I said, you'll have, even if it's not a service where somebody's there, a memorial or program, we need something. I say, your nieces and nephews need something. I need something. So I was not okay with her saying that. And then when she heard my point of view, she said, "Yeah, I get it." She says, "Okay, I'll think about it." I said, well, yeah, let's think about it. You know what? I need to call my other first cousins and make sure that they know what she's talking about so that we can get on her and change her mind. But all of that to say, the main thing here is to discuss it with family. This is something because I talk about it and I have a plan. Again, my plan is not fully baked out at all, but the key components of my plan I've communicated to most people in my close family, and we're making sure that we have an understanding. Beneficiary has been updated. And let me tell you also about the individual that I changed to be my beneficiary. It took about a year and a half or 2 years, about a year and a half. And this individual reached out to me and said, I'm ready to talk about this now. It was about a year. I'm going to say about a year. It wasn't 2 years. I'm going to say maybe about a year and a half. It took that long for this individual to say, I'm okay being the executor for you. I know it's a lot, and you said you're going to map it out and we're going to talk through it. So I'm okay with that now. But it didn't happen right away. So we've got to have these conversations so that we can give everybody an opportunity to get okay with some of the decisions. Does that make sense? And if you've ever had someone share a personal life decision with you, somebody that you loved, and you didn't necessarily agree with that life decision, it took a while for you to be okay with that. So this is big. This is something that most of us don't talk about. And so this is not something that we talk about on a regular basis. If you hang around Carolyn Williams, you probably do, because we talk about this. I talk about this. Now, let's talk about the cost of this. Let me share something with you. What I did is I went and pulled just from, we had a lot of people that we lost as a part of COVID. So I just went and said, let's look at 2021, and went by state, and I looked at the average burial cost and the average cremation cost. And I have this for all 50 states. I just put the first part of it right here. So you can kind of see here, average cost. Take a look here. If you, and you can see some of them are pretty much in the same ballpark, between 6,500 and just over 8,000. Look like Idaho had cremation cost of average $5,694. What this last column over here is the variance. The cremation was 15% less than burial for Alabama, and I have this for all 50 states. Now, if you recently if you've recently had to work through burial or cremation cost with someone, a loved one, and you find that these costs, and let me know if this is about the amount that you paid, or did you say more or less? If that's about the amount that you think that those services were, if you know, just say about that amount, or if you think it was more or it was less. Let me know. I'm just curious, because this was just from a survey that's out there from some funeral service, funeral governance. There's a lot of governance around funeral and those services, and the costs are also governed so that people don't gouge people. But if you've recently gone through, burying someone or taking care of someone's last wishes, last final services, let me know if this is about the cost that you would expect that you paid, or if it was more or less. I'm just curious. I know you may not be looking at your state, but that's where I was saying the states are pretty much the same. I think New York and Pennsylvania were the highest, but so what I'm using here is, if you're going to prepare for, so if you're going to prepare to have a service, then I just want you to know how much you probably need to have set aside for that, or how much your family is going to have to come up with if you don't plan that. What I would say is $10,000. Just put $10,000 aside, because this is just the funeral services. This is not the repast. This is not any location that you have. This is not any flowers. This is just the funeral services. So anything that happens outside of the funeral home, is not included here. So yeah, someone says cremation is about that cost paid. Yeah. So with that, this is kind of how much we need to set aside. And if you don't, this is about how much your family is going to need to come up with. So again, we don't want to be that burden for our family. So I just want to bring some awareness so that we know what's happening. So again, in final services, there's many options available. This needs to happen. This needs to happen so that we know what to do right away in the time of your demise. Yeah, I see. Yes, ballpark in Missouri in 2021. Yeah, about that same price. Good. That helps me, guys. Thank you so much. So really, I'm going to say set aside $10,000. You need $10,000, or your family's going to have to come up with at about $10,000 to get you buried or to get you cremated, to get your final remains taken care of. So with that, that's something that we want to know and plan for. Again, we don't want to be a burden to our family. Now, getting your house in order, the next steps. Think and plan. The biggest part of this is thinking and planning. What do you want to do? And also about you, about your spouse. Do you need to have conversations with your spouse so that you both can make some plans? What about anybody that you have a partnership with, whether you are a business partner, whether you are property owning partners? If you have any partnerships with anybody, you need to get together and figure out what's going to happen with the partnership. So think and plan. Just kind of get it in your mind and start working through what would you like to have happen. And create a list so that you have an action list to start to make some of these things happen. I don't want to sound morbid, because this is actually, whenever I work on things like this, I feel good. It feels good. You know how it feels good whenever you procrastinate on doing something, and when you finally get it done, it feels so good. This is one of those things that we should do. So when you work on this, it's going to help you to feel so much better. You're going to feel responsible, and you know that you're not bringing a lot of burden to your family. Now, one thing that I also want to share is that we need to have the conversations with your family. Whatever family looks like, if it's your children, if it is your siblings, if it is whoever, needs to know what your plans are. Because you also want to find someone that's going to be, especially single people, you want to find somebody that's going to be that point person for you, and start to partner with them and start to go through things with them. If they don't agree right away, it's okay. It's okay. Just give them time. This is not an easy subject to talk about. It's not easy to talk about it here. Well, it's not difficult to talk about, but it's not something that I've talked about online a lot. I've talked to individuals here. I see someone here that we recently talked about this in a conversation that we had back in March of this year. This individual had some pretty extensive experience doing this, handling some affairs for some family members. So there's some people here that's gone through this. And so if you have gone through this, and if you have some advice for individuals that are watching this on the replay, just if you have some advice to share, just type them in the comments as you put your final questions in the comments. Because that's really all I have right now. So I want to answer your questions. I'm going to go back through your questions and see if I can give you some answers. If you found this beneficial, let me know this was beneficial. It says, what about digital? I heard it's unacceptable in Texas. Let's see. Digital, is that a will? Is that a will? Is that what you were talking about, David, a will? Yeah, I think that's what we were talking about at that point. Digital. Now, the will is always digital. The will is always digital, because whether you have to have a piece of paper filed somewhere plus digital, but it's always going to be digital. Even if you go to an attorney, they're gonna send it to you. They're gonna validate it. Yeah. Digital. I think everything can be digital. So again, we need to look at the state laws. I don't know that a digital will is not acceptable in Texas, because every will is digital. Meaning people aren't typing it up and have it slid in a file somewhere. So it's going to be digital somewhere. Maybe to execute, you have to print it out. So if that's what we were talking about, so I don't think that not having a digital will not being accepted is gonna be the case anywhere. It may be that they need a paper copy to execute. It's just like if you have a death certificate. A death certificate, they're going to want you to have a paper copy. You want to have original paper copies of the death certificate. So get many copies of that when you need it. But yeah, the will can be digital because everything's digital. Meaning you may have to print it out to have it executed, but that's okay. Okay. So it says, yeah, this is beneficial. Working online to do my will free. Excellent. Excellent. Okay, David, I see. Yeah. Now, please know, look at the laws for your state. And just like if you were researching anything, you can research this. This information is not anything you have to pay for. Most of this you can get for free, and you can do most of it at low cost or no cost. Or you can get a service like a legal service that you pay for it. If you have any questions, you reach out to them. But do not think that this is something that you need to hire somebody to do. This is not something that you need to hire somebody to do. Oh, I see. David, I see you said, I guess, video. Yeah, that is the video one I shared there. What's pneumatic? What's the will that is where you can, it was a voice will, where you could vocalize your will, but those are not accepted in most states. I was thinking that because video is available, that they would allow vocal wills more now because you can videotape. It doesn't have to be somebody just saying, I was in the room and I heard it. They can videotape the will, but most states don't accept that. Most states don't accept the audible, the vocal will. It starts with an N. I'm going to find that word and I'm going to put it in the comments after the session's over. It's not coming. I see the word. It's N-U-M. It's what? I don't know. I see the word. A holographic. I see the word, but I can't tell you what the word is. But that's a verbal will. I looked up holographic will, and all this information popped up. Had been procrastinating. This has inspired me. Great. Excellent. See? That's what I mean, guys. All I'm doing here is just to provide you a catalyst. The information's out there. You don't have to hire me. You don't have to hire anybody to do this. And I know that you are going to feel so good. No matter if you make some steps on this, no matter when you do that, can you come back to this video and post a comment to say, thank you for this. I'm making progress on this. This got me inspired to do it. Because I want to know. And this is something that you're doing for your family. Now, I want to talk about something else before I go. And I want you to think about this. Because this seems to be a problem that it's not a problem. It's a situation. It's a reality that we see. When we talked about individuals that we need to think about the demise of, and I said your minor children, we also need to think about our adult children that aren't adulting. Does that make sense? If you have adults that you have given birth to years ago, but they're not owning up to the responsibility of being adults, where do you think that's going to come back to in the case of their demise? If they don't start to own up the responsibility of if they don't own up to the responsibility of handling there it is. I knew it was an N-U-M. I could see it. It started with an M. This is a vocal will where you witnessed it. You spoke it out loud and people witnessed it in the room. Most states don't accept this anymore. I thought this would be accepted more and more and more because you could thank you, Roz, because you could videotape them. Yeah. I've been working on it, but I stopped. This is telling me go ahead and finish it. Yeah. It's okay. It's okay. We're gonna do it. And when you start to share your information with your family, you're gonna have multiple conversations. And that also is going to encourage you, and you're encouraging other family members to think about this. One thing I'm going to tell you, please do not argue about this. Please do not argue about this. This is not anything that we need to argue about. If people come across in an argumentative tone, you probably shocked them. That's okay. Let them be shocked. Don't come back at them. It's me. I can make whatever decision. Don't do that. Don't do that. Let them process it. Please do not argue about this. Okay? Please. When people say, that don't make no sense. Why are you going to do that? Well, I thought you were going to do that to me. How come that? Do not argue about this. You make your decisions, you write them down, and it's done. Do not argue about this. Okay? Let your family process it. Okay? Now, let's see if I have any other questions. I'm encouraged to see you guys say you're thinking about it and this is beneficial. I'm encouraged. Thank you so much. Yeah, you're involved. So a lot of us have been involved in situations where we've had to deal with loved ones and to take care of things. And we just want to be that person that they say, oh, I appreciate them so much because they had it all planned out. They had the money set aside. There was no GoFundMe. That is so embarrassing to me. When people are saying, my family member has died, here is a GoFundMe. Can you help us? Oh, no. No. Before you went on the cruise, we should have made sure we had some money set aside for this. Okay? Before you bought that new car, before you got those red bottom shoes and that handbag that cost over $1,000, we should have set aside some money for this. This is about management. Lord, help us to number our days so that we can develop a heart of wisdom. Help us to number our days, Lord, so that we can learn a heart of wisdom. When we know that our days are numbered, we start to act differently. Each day is a day that we celebrate, and we know that they're not going to be here forever. So let's prepare for that. Okay, well, I don't see any more questions. I want to just say thank you all for joining me. Now, this is Money Monday. I'm doing this every Monday in August because it is my birthday month. And I am spending my birthday month focusing on what the Lord has called me to do. So I'm going on steroids, doing what the Lord has called me to do. So therefore, every Monday I'm going to come here and I am going to provide you just some education or teaching on money. This is what the Lord has called me to do in this season. And so I am just honored to be able to do that today. So join me next Monday. I think we have one more. Do I have one more? What is this? Today is the 22nd. Wow, we have one more. So one more Money Monday. That's next Monday, 7 p.m. Central Time. Join me right here where you're watching right now. We will have a topic that I promise you is going to be one that you're going to find beneficial. If you found this beneficial, you can still share this out on your timeline. People can watch this on the replay. I hope that it can benefit others. So everybody, thank you so much for joining me. And I will see you next time on Money Monday. Be blessed.